Hey everyone, welcome to Hanging Out at the Hive with Mary Wong. Today we have a very special guest, as we always do, since during each episode we bring one of Mary's friends from her hive to share with us their expertise and walk away with some really great information. And today I'm very excited to have Jackie Reeves. She is the Managing Director for Bell Rock Capital, and someone who I've known a long time and Mary's known a long time, and we're thrilled to have her on because we are talking about finances, we're talking about money, and how to get financially savvy, how to save today for tomorrow. So I'm really excited about this conversation because it's one of those topics that we need to talk about. It's important to talk about, and a lot of us don't necessarily want to talk about it. So thank you so much, Jackie, for being here. And I know Mary has some things to share with you because she's very impressed with you, and that's why we wanted to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, Mary.
How are you?
Great to see you.
It's good to see you, too. Thanks for joining us. Money. I'm not sure what we say about money because I think a lot of people are very uncomfortable to talk about it, and then there's those people like yourself and some others that are very confident with it. And I think there's some people that don't know what to ask or how to ask about it because they don't know what their relationship with money is or what to how to handle it. It's very funny because this all came about for me is that my relationship with money wasn't always very good. It was I was brought up in a different kind of a household where my father was a doctor, but we lived in a very small town, and money was very tight. You had 6 kids, and it was very hard. And but you had a certain way that you had to you had to look like you lived a certain lifestyle, and it was way beyond the means of what you could probably afford. Mm-hmm. And so if you start to look back at that, is that how you carry it through your adulthood? And it really is interesting how that really does carry forth. And as you start to learn about how do you save, how do you do that, do you want to live this way for your whole life, or are you going to make some changes, and what are you going to do about it? And so this is interesting to me because I think it's always a white elephant in the room, especially to entrepreneurs when they're starting out, is can you afford to start a business? Do you understand what the financial plan is for the business? Or, what are some of those things? So today, yeah, and you're not always, sometimes it's always not the favorite subject to have, but I'm so grateful for you to have it. And then I'm also really grateful because the tips that you'll offer us, I made myself a deal at the beginning of the year. I know, like resolutions at the beginning of the year, a lot of people say I'm going to lose 20 pounds, I'm going to go on this whole thing. I said I'm going to save 10% of my paycheck every pay period and put it in the bank.
That's a terrific goal.
And versus, I'll do the other stuff, but that was because I think there's also that financial health that you need to do. So
absolutely.
I want to hear what you have to say, so I'm going to let you talk so that my hive can be financially wealthy.
Thank you so much, Mary and Kate, for inviting me on, and I'm lucky to join the hive and share some insights. So intriguingly enough, I've just over the last month or so kind of gone through a financial and health wellness check. So I went and kind of did my mammogram, I went and had my physical with my doctor. And on the financial side, like you were saying, Mary, in terms of looking at, New Year's resolutions and everything and saving 10%, I'm between the 10 and 15% per year. But I want to point out, and I literally just came back from doing a 401k enrollment program. So during those, you're sitting with and speaking with some people who are very savvy about their finances and kind of know exactly what investments they're going to pick from the lineup, and you have some others that are new. This is their first time, their first job, their first time even contemplating what to save or how to save, and the real tip is to always do something. So if it's completely new to you, start at 1 or 2%. And then there are ways that you can, through some tools on the internet and even through your own online payroll system, you can increase that increment every year. So if you can afford to do, or if you're even a little intimidated, just put that 1% aside. Have it redirected right into your own savings account, for example. And then every year, if you just look to do another 1% or 2%, in the grand scheme of things, when I do all the math, that's like an extra, or not an extra, cup of coffee a day. So it's really, when you drill it down to that per day amount that you might be saving for yourself, whether it's for your retirement, or maybe it's because you want to do something, you want to start a new business in 5 years or 10 years or 7 years or 3. You can have that allocation of cash, kind of like your own reserve fund, in which then that just gives you more financial freedom, financial flexibility, and gives you more options for yourself going forward. So I would really hope that the one key takeaway that people take from this is that they start saving tomorrow. Call your payroll company today and just start that, so that the next time you have a paycheck, just a little bit more is coming out. Hopefully your company has some sort of program, a benefits package. Maybe it's the 401k, maybe it's a SEP, maybe it's something else. And if you're doing right now 3%, or say your company has a match and you're doing the max, just tomorrow increase that 1%. So this way that financial flexibility is there for you. So that's kind of the first thing I'd throw out there in terms of suggestions for our audience.
So, Jackie, I'm curious to know, when you meet with different people, is there a conversation, and I guess this would apply to everyone, but I'm curious, especially when you meet with women, is there one specific question that you get asked most that you're like, oh my gosh, besides, this is obviously a great tip, everyone should be saving always, right from as early as you can, but is there something that you just kind of like drives you nuts because you get that question all the time and you just want people to know this thing specifically?
I think the comment, or more the educational process around it, is, as Mary said, this is that elephant in the room. And even though companies or people will set aside that time to meet with their person, whoever their financial person might be, I'm not sure, you may have seen that commercial, and I forgot actually what insurance product they're advertising, but the two families are neighbors, and they're all like, oh, honey, did you call that insurance company? And all of a sudden, everybody's doing absolutely everything else but that, right, Mary? And so this is similar to that. So even though they've allocated the time to talk about this, kind of like we're doing today, it's still like, oh, gosh, I dread having to even make that decision. So not making that decision is, in effect, a decision. So just trying to engage people, kind of, Kate, to have that, try not to be fearful of this, because it's your friend. It's going to be, if you will, that business that you can extract cash from at some point in time. So try and think of it more, and this is what the conversation that I have with people, because 95% of the people out there really just want this to happen without making a decision. And so trying to just drill it down to the most basic format of, asset allocation, have some large cap, have some mid, have some small, have some international, have also a cash allocation, because that's an asset allocation. And just keep it very, very straightforward and simple. And I also have, that I'll share with you, that we can share with everybody else, and a report card. So it's an educational, it's literally 10 questions, so that people can, just take 2 questions and think about, do you know these? Can we help you educate yourself about just a little bit at a time, so that it's not so strange and uncomfortable, is really what I try and talk to people about, so that they want to pick up that phone call, say down the road, or they go talk to somebody else, or they hear something at a cocktail party. It's more engaging rather than, oh, I don't even want to go there. They want to, look at it, and I don't want to be too female about this or not, but when I look at stocks, and for the longest time, for me, it's shopping. So when
Yeah.
I'm looking at some stocks and I'm looking at certain things, I do a ton of research, like somebody might do whatever the interest that they have. You try and find out as much as possible you can about that product or that service before you buy it. So I do the same thing, and I'm sure others do, with respect to stocks. And I would suggest people do that too. It's what do I like to do, what do I don't like to do, and then investigate those particular stocks. And then it is a buying and it's a hold, and then it's like, all right, when might I want to get rid of it? So just keep it very, very straightforward and simple as possible.
Oh, I like that. Okay. People.
Well, what I really like is the fact about that it's simple, but number two is doing something.
Yes.
I mean, because I think I think for me, to your point, Jackie, when I first started and I saw that I know it sounds stupid, but when you saw that I had $2,000 saved up, it was a big deal.
Right.
It was a really big deal. The big deal is, and I think that the kicker here is, put it in a bank that's not someplace that you're going to go into or walk into, or it's easy accessible, or on the same card as your debit,
Right.
because you don't want to spend that money.
Exactly.
You just want to make it a little harder to get to.
Absolutely. I joke with my children, or maybe they joke with me, when certain candies come into the house, for example, I'll put it in the freezer so that they just have to think a little while longer before they want to have whatever that treat is. It's the same kind of concept where just put it a little farther removed, so you really need to think a little bit harder about, do I really want to access that now, and is it really worth accessing that money now? And to your point of kind of that 2,000, 2,500 number, the company I was just visiting with, they had started to enroll, but we didn't have the meeting quite yet. And so when we got there, we were looking at different monies that people had already set aside. And to your point, they're like, oh, look at that. I didn't realize XYZ had already accumulated. So it can happen without kind of even thinking about it, or kind of missing that money from your paycheck as long as you extract it, which is key.
Mm-hmm.
So for those people who don't have a 401k, maybe they have their own business, they're on their own, what are some things that they should be doing to better save this and just, be able to invest in the right things so that they can make their money work for them?
Sure. So many companies, and even on the individual side with their own companies, most likely have the ability to still split. So if, say, you're paying yourself, for example, you can most likely still split that between what's going in your checking account and what might be going into either a savings or an investment account, and if you have enough, kind of the IRA situation. So kind of just try and keep those, if you will, quadranted. I know a lot of people like to keep things kind of in a box on a shelf, and it's over here for this use and over here for that use. And then, Kate, kind of once that delineation has been set up, and that's not automated, so some people might pay themselves monthly or weekly or however often that happens, so then that money's already split. And then with respect to what to invest in, kind of the multi-million-dollar question, but there are some very, very simple, straightforward tools out there that many, many financial institutions have, and they're not that everybody likes them, but I'll just throw it out as a suggestion. They're target date funds, or kind of life cycles types of funds. And the way to utilize or think about those funds, and you can Google almost any single one of those tickers, is to they have a year tied to them. So it might be life cycle 2035 or target date 2040. And essentially the portfolio managers at those various institutions are managing your money very conservatively today. And as they approach the year 2035 or 2040, for example, it's becoming more conservative. And the reason it's becoming more conservative is because the year that you select there, and this is individual, is typically the year you might be retiring. So then literally 80% of that money is most likely in conservative investments, fixed income types of securities. So at its very basic level, many companies have that available to them. Just check the expense ratios, because some of them it's very lean, and some others can be just a little bit more expensive, and make sure it's just right for you.
So you talk about this 10-question report card. I'm curious, what else is on that? Because I feel like I need to know, like, and go.
I was waiting for her to say, because I know we're going to get. I know. So why don't we do it and see?
Sure. Okay, so I had to put my glasses on because it's a little tiny. So the first question is, do you feel you understand the investment options in your account? So that goes to your question right off the bat, Kate, in terms of what do you invest in. So whatever you choose to invest in, whether it's something like those life cycle or target date funds, or whether you want to pick, I don't know, Nike or whatever you like, whatever specific company that you use. Like I go to Starbucks religiously, so things like that you want to know about. So first question is, do you feel you understand the investment options very well? And it's yes, no, or kind of not sure. The second one is, do you feel you understand the benefits and features of your account too? So there are many different options, like you said, which kind of account should I set up? So know whether it's a savings, an investment, if it's a IRA or a SEP. So know your rules, because if you do have to access that money, you want to know whether you're going to have to pay taxes on it to extract the funds, and kind of what other ramifications might be there. Or maybe you've already paid the money and it's completely accessible to you for whatever you need to use it for. And then what percent, kind of like Mary, you just said, looking into 2016, you were just going to do 10%. So this next question is, what percent are you currently contributing to your savings, to your retirement goals? So if it's at 1 today, maybe look at it, kind of a goal set. If they have 0, 1 to 3, 3.5 to 7, or north of 8. As a rule of thumb, the industry had been stating kind of hitting a 10% target for your savings goal every year. That's since moved towards 15%. And the primary reason for that is because, things are getting more expensive. People are living longer. So once you kind of stop working or scale back your working, the amount of money you now need in retirement is greater. And then another point is the Social Security. There's just a big question mark over that in terms of how much is going to be there and at what point in time. So basically, if you think the entire amount of what you've contributed is going to come back to you when you hit 65 or 68, that still only represents about 30% of what you're going to need in retirement. So when you kind of quantify that, you really need to try and bump that up more towards 15% over time.
So 15% of your paycheck every month?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So that means no more coffee or anything for you.
Exactly.
Well, it's so funny because I know there's a lot of people who follow the big names like a Susie Orman or something, or some of these other books, and they talk about give up your latte and then there's like the other people that talk more about those are just little tips that you need to be aware of, but don't deprive yourself of like some of these small things, because that's just going to drive you insane. And
then
so
you're not going to do it.
Right, so they have like a whole kind of different way around it. So it's very interesting to me to hear.
Okay, people, really, at the end of the day, it's either you do it or you don't do it. Because if you don't put the money away, you're not going to have it. So if you don't do it, I mean, seriously, doesn't that scare you that if at 65 you won't have any money? That's what scared the poop out of me, because I'm not that far off. I mean, I got a couple more years, but I don't have that many. And I don't have anybody to go to say, I can see me holding up a cardboard sign. So, it's like, it's like, really?
With your 21 jobs.
I'm being serious. What would you do? Seriously, because she's right.
It's
You have
true.
It's true. What do you have? You don't have anybody paying your insurance. You don't have any. It's all those things run through your head. If you're, especially if you have to get medication, if you have to have any of that, what would you do?
And I don't want to scare people because you're absolutely right, Mary. That who's going to take care of you at this point in time. But I think kind of stepping into that 15% number. So for people starting today or have put a number aside, it's important to say, okay, I can get there in the future. And perhaps you'll overshoot and because you kind of couldn't do it when you weren't earning enough to really make ends meet and you only did a little, then you have to make up for it later on and maybe do north of 15 in order to kind of capture that whole entire bucket.
That's what I meant, like when I said, I wish I would have known. It's like Kate and I had a conversation today about what you don't know, you don't know. I wish I would have had somebody like you in my life that I would have taught me, because I just didn't have a very good teacher about money. And it wasn't a topic we ever talked about. When I left to go to college, nobody taught me how to write a check out or how to balance a checkbook you didn't know. I didn't know.
Many people don't know, and the even more bizarre around that is on many college campuses, you had all the credit card companies willing to give you, $5,000-$10,000. It was just kind of crazy.
And you lived off those credit cards, I might add, because I remember when I got my very first job, which you guys laugh at, I thought it was awesome, and I made like $20,000 for the year. And it was like, oh my God, right? And that was, and you lived in California. $20,000 bought you nothing.
Right.
You paid your bus pass, and it was nothing. And so if I ate macaroni and cheese or those cups one more time,
right.
But I was going to say
the ramen noodles.
Yes, those. Thank you. But I just think that this is such. And I was just going to ask you, Jackie, when you talk about this, because of that, kids, right? I mean, high school kids, college kids. How far back do you teach these? I mean, it's such a great lesson.
Yes, that's a very good question. I kind of within our family, we try and talk about it a lot sooner. And I've set up investment accounts for the kids and try and introduce them to, what is it you like, whether it's Disney as a little kid or, if they're working out and doing other things and kind of consumer staples. And I've tried to educate them with respect to the stocks. And then we kind of take a look at that every so often, because I don't want them to be so focused on it that they're day trading. Because kind of that's the other tip, right? You don't want to constantly follow a trend, because then you could, by trading your own account too excessively, you can just miss out on some upturns, capture it, and the timing might not be too well, and then you're constantly trying to chase the next best thing out there, rather than just sticking with, okay, I'm going to hold on to this, and this is where I think maybe my exit point is. So as you're looking and doing research, think about those longer term plans, so that you can say, all right, I'm disciplined and I'll get out of that in another 10 points. It might take a month, it might take a year, and there might be a lot of volatility along the way, but I would just further stress not to get too focused on the near-term volatility, because there's a ton right now of volatility across the global markets, and that can scare people.
Mm-hmm. To Kate's point, when she was talking about all those people like Susie Orman and all those people like that, that does cause a lot of stress, because those people come in and they say, do this, or this other one says do this, or there's a tip out here for that. So how do you know who, I mean, really, that's a really good question to me. I mean, who do you listen to go to?
That is an awesome question, and it is perhaps more trial and error. You mentioned Susie Orman, there's always Kramer on CNBC that just puts on a great show. Tony Robbins is kind of in the financial space too, here and there. So, you know, it's back to basics and research, Mary and Kate. It's about kind of doing maybe internally what feels good. You don't want to stick with something that is clearly plummeting, and so that's another thing. In addition to having goals with respect to target prices on the upside, have what they call stops. So a threshold of pain might be if it goes down 20% or 30%, I'm out. Like I can't take that. So that's some other disciplines that you might want to have. Clearly, I think with respect to the people that you mentioned, they're great marketers. They have some insights, and perhaps in some of those books there have been some trends that you can pinpoint to that have made sense and have made money over the years. Otherwise, I'm thinking they wouldn't have the great stage that they do. So there probably are some different attributes that you can extract from each one of those experts to apply to your own portfolio. But that's the other point that I'd make. Whether you're young and just starting out or older and almost hitting retirement age, the risk profile could be very similar. Because if you're just starting out and you've just gone through kind of that 2008, 2009 debacle of a market, and maybe you saw friends, families, neighbors, heard about people that were just completely decimated, you might be just very, very fearful of the market. So you might be better off being conservative, even if you have time on your side and you have like 30 years to retirement. Hopefully during those years you'll get more comfortable, or maybe not. But that's your risk profile. You need to make sure you can sleep at night versus someone else that's older and should be more conservative just because you don't want to have to go through another cycle. Hopefully not as bad as that, but it is markets come in cycles. It's what's going to happen. We're going to have a 20% correction. We're going to have a 10%. I don't expect another 50% downturn, but crazy things have happened in the world with respect to terrorism and everything else. You just don't know. So you need to, kind of if you're hitting that retirement time period, you should just allocate more towards cash or conservative investments so that you can weather that downstream more appropriately should that happen. But it's so very individual with respect to what you can tolerate and what you can't. So listen to those people, extract. I look at it as almost a good book. You go through some great books and you're like, oh, I really like that idea, or I like that idea, and that one seems really strange. I'm not gonna go with that. And it's the same thing for each individual as it sits on the financial side. If something seems really bizarre, take it with a grain of salt and move on to the next idea.
So are there some pieces of advice you can share with people as far as maybe some of the areas that they should be looking at? Are they spending money where they could maybe be saving some, or like, just kind of like finding monies that they might easily find?
A great, and I'll share the tools with you. One of the websites from the government, actually, it's a .gov, has, I'll say, like 5 or so videos, and I'll shoot them to you. They're links that we can share with people. And one of them in particular goes through kind of a budgeting process. And with that, they suggest you go through, in as much detail as you can, what your debts are and what the interest rates are. And kind of just put that, they actually have even worksheets right on the website to use and download. And so the easier things to do might be small balances. You might want to kind of knock them off even if they're not at the most highest rate, but then clearly reorganize that and go to the highest rate debt, whether it's credit cards, but even some of the credit cards are interest-free for a few years, and some of the other ones you're paying 20 or 25%. So look to just really chop that down incrementally so that you can start putting it on that save shelf, if you will. And just look at it over a period of time, whether it's depending upon the size of your debt, compared to your income stream. Maybe it's a 3-year plan or so, or maybe it's a little longer or shorter. And then you can reallocate the money that you would have been paying in interest alone on an annual basis to some of those credit cards into your savings bucket, for example.
That's a good idea.
Okay. And then there are some other things maybe that you're spending on that maybe you could do without, right?
There's
there
always things we can do without. That is for sure.
And also, like you mentioned before, perhaps you don't want to, just like exercising, right? It's not like 5 days or nothing, so you might still want to have that great cup of coffee or go out and have that, absolutely amazing glass of wine. And that's okay, because this is a long-term strategy. It shouldn't be for short-term. So you want to build your own plan so that you can sustain it and that you can have tangents. It's a curvy path to this. It's not a straight line. You're going to go on that wonderful vacation, and you're going to have that girls' weekend, in New York City or something, and that's okay. But then quickly kind of just realign and maybe do a little less that month and then a little more the following month. It's not about doing without for 20 years. It's about making it manageable and fun, because we want to have fun now, and we also want to have fun in retirement as well.
Awesome. And I think, too, just like on the budget side, it's so interesting when people, like I remember when my sister and brother-in-law first got married, and they were single. They were single, both working, they did well, and so they would go out to dinner pretty much every Friday.
Right.
And it was just like a constant thing. And so when they decided to get married and then they wanted to have children, they really took a look at their budget, and they figured out how much they were really spending on entertainment and food, just eating out, and they were floored. Like they figured it was that number because that makes sense if you go out all the time, but to actually see it and track it on paper is a very different story. And so, they stopped doing that so much. Again, they were building for a family and stuff, and so it's just so fascinating to me when you actually do track, and this goes for anything, business, finances, anything. When you really start tallying and tracking stuff, you can find things where you might just, like even just going to Target. How many of us go to Target to buy shampoo and you walk out spending $150 because this is on sale, and
that looks good,
and look at these cute plates, or I've been needing to get new sheets. Like we don't need all of this stuff.
And Costco, Costco's even, forget it. I'll go in there for one thing and I walk out with a pallet. It's
my God.
Or a canoe. Of course I need that canoe.
Everybody needs a canoe. Right? Oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
Exactly.
There's I follow these guys. They actually have a great TED Talk. The Minimalists, and I'm forgetting their names, but they did this great TED Talk about how to become a minimalist, and the way in which they did it the way in which this one guy describes how you can do it easily. It was just a brilliant talk, and it's just so fascinating to me, like this whole movement of, less is more, and you don't need all of these things, and we really don't.
No, and I am a pretty big fan of the tiny house. Have you seen that too?
No, I've seen
my God.
I've heard about it, and I've heard people talk about it, but
I have a tiny house.
I love that show, but it's taking like a 3,000-foot home and shrinking it to 300 feet. 300 square feet. And it's incredible. I'm like, where's your closet? Because I don't know where they're putting some of their basic essentials.
So let's talk. So it's funny you brought that up.
Yes.
So because this all came about, and so I'm glad you brought it up. Because what happened for me was that I had a lot of things that when I got sick, I got, you did from different sizes, you went to different things, you did all this stuff, so you had different things with clothes. And I think that's what's happened to me truly over the last 2 years has been this whole thing of realization that all this stuff is just stuff. And when I was preparing for the Women's Symposium, and we did all the decorating inside my house, and we made all those decorations for the dinner and everything, and I removed all the furniture out of the house. I realized I don't have a fancy house or anything. It's small. Me and my XYZ amount of dogs.
Right.
I was like, but I just realized, oh my God, nobody sits on those chairs. Nobody sleeps in that. Really, really.
Right.
And I got rid of it all. And I started really for 2 years. I've really worked hard at saving money so I could buy furniture that would be utilized, right? That we would actually utilize, and that I could fit everybody. And then came the part about the clothes. And so even though I've been working on that part, because there's a other part that you have to deal with, is a pain in the butt. But then I think that what you come down is that it's very painful. It's so much that story that's in your head that you tell yourself, I need this, I need this, I need this. And then to get rid of it, I can only tell you this whole thing that happens to you is it's a whoosh that comes over you of I'm so happy that's gone. Right. It's clean. It is. It is. And as you start to go through it, you just want to do more of it.
Right.
And then if you can, and to your point, Jackie, you gave me an idea just a few minutes ago. I always, and I will always give my stuff, and if I can help out I would be happy to give it. But there's nothing wrong with earning money with it either.
Right.
There's nothing wrong if it's doable, and there's a lot of resells out there. So as you take that money to earn your 10 or 15%, Kate, we could do that.
New business model.
We could add that on for our hive model and put it in. Well, heck, we got a little bit of catching up to do here, girl.
Oh my gosh, I love
there's
it.
nothing. I mean, just to throw out some ideas that I saw on the TV thing that they hold, designer handbags and stuff like that. They take the date off.
Yeah.
I'm being serious.
There's an app for that, Mary. There's an app for that.
So
and we have some friends right around town that come to your house and help you, kind of on the consignment side and put it out there. And it's incredible. And I mean, by and large, there's people want to kind of use it this season, this year, but then they do want the next stuff, the next thing, because it's fun and it's great to have, and it goes great with that dress, and so they're looking to clean out their closet and make the next purchase reasonable too. So the whole economy works on that side to resell all these things.
I gave away a bag of a great big bag of jewelry, and the lady is starting out a new jewelry company, and she actually is going to just use all the stuff for the beads.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I said that she just helped her start out. She saved all of her money so she could start out her thing. So I was happy to help her out. But now I think about it, I'm like, dang, we'll just save that and we'll just bang that. Well, I can have an extra cup of coffee.
Oh my God, bring it to you could have your own little setup, Mary, at our Wing Women events. It could be like your little.
We're
gonna have Jackie talking next year for 2017. We're gonna have little takeout buckets for everybody.
Right.
Start your savings.
So funny.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that would be awesome.
The other thing that I thought about, Kate, as you were talking about your family and different things that they realized they could maybe do without, there are some credit card companies, American Express, one that springs to mind. At the end of the year, I get a financial summary of everything I've spent throughout the whole year, and it buckets them in a nice pie so that you can see kind of where you allocated your capital, if you will, for the year, and it helps you make some new decisions for the following year. So I'm sure a lot of other credit card companies do that too. So you can take a look, if you will, at those. They'll separate out restaurants and everything else. You can be like, oh, and you don't even have to guess or even do the math yourself. You can see the line item, which can then help you make some decisions.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, Jackie, do you have any last minute tips that you want to share before we sign off?
I would just suggest that people don't be afraid and just make the decision to do a little bit more starting right away. And I think they'll be better off this time next year just with those two items.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I love that. I think that Mary, we should throw out a challenge to people. We should challenge everyone to pick that number, to start saving that money, to pick that percentage. And hey, like you said, if it can't be 10% yet or 15% yet, 7%, 8%, what does that look like? And maybe it's a challenge of how could you how could you kind of find some extra money that you're spending that you shouldn't be spending, or maybe don't have to be spending, and make that 10%, because I really do feel like most people could find that extra bit every month if they just stopped doing some of the things that they don't necessarily need to do.
Absolutely, and it helps too to be able to put it in a number per day. So for example, I also have a sheet that I'll share with you. But for example, there's in general, say somebody is making 50,000 gross for the year, and they want to save that 10%. That's $13.70 per day.
That's tangible. That's
tangible. You can, and I have a whole grid that people can look at and be like, all right, maybe it's not that today, maybe it's half of that. So then they can just make some more informed decisions to hit their goals over time.
Cool. Do you share that grid, Jackie?
Absolutely.
I'd be really grateful, because I don't think, I think actually how this started for me was just what you were talking about. Was I did start to think about it when I started to get older, and it was like, what am I going to do? But the other part is I started to realize that when I go shopping, I don't say like I'm going to rethink. I'll think about the pair of shoes that cost $100. I just get the shoes, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
But when you're going to go saving and you're going to put the money in the savings account, it's like, well, I'll think about it, and I'm going to try to get to the $100. And it just didn't relate to me. It's for me. It's not for anybody.
I know. I think that's an excellent point, because people think they're doing without.
Right.
But actually, this is for them too. It's just, kind of that delayed gratification. So the other part of the grid, which is probably more important, is, kind of what is that number for people? And while we won't have to get enough time to get into what that is now, if we take that same line of saving that $50,000 and 10% a year for 30 years, the person will wind up with about $566,000.
Wow.
So then we assume they move it into a more conservative investment, earning a rate of return of 3%. So what that means for people, and I call this now their consumption phase, is that for the next 10 years, if they were to utilize this money, they would be able to extract $5,000 a month. On the 20 years, it would be $3,000 a month, and for 30 years, it would be $2,300 a month. So then it helps with what is my number and what do I need in retirement. Obviously, we don't know how long we're going to live, right? So this is a bucket of money, and if you assume another 30 years beyond that, I'll just say that's a safe assumption. So it helps you figure out how much you'll need on a monthly basis to supplement maybe other income that you might have coming in.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
We need to expedite mine, please.
Yeah, we need that. We need that now. All right, awesome. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for sharing this with us. This was really helpful, and I feel like we just need to continue to have more and more conversations and speak openly about money, and not being afraid to ask the questions and, kind of feeling stupid about asking certain questions, and really just get the knowledge that we need to, empower ourselves to get more financially savvy, so that we're, setting ourselves up for success for the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you
I
so
couldn't
much,
agree
Jackie.
more. Thank you.
My
Thanks,
honey
Jackie.
and my hive will be very rich. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for watching. We will see you next time at Hanging Out at the Hive.
Yes.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.